I'm thrilled to see a room full of mostly women and some good men. Thank you for being here. After this week, one of the things I said, I get to start today with something really fun, as opposed to sitting in a caucus of my members talking about why we need to support this or what problem we have with that. You know, I remember the article of Ungovernable California. I had just been elected. It was a huge article in The Economist, I believe.
Right.
And I have to say where we are now is thanks in large part to the voters of California who passed a majority vote for the budget so that a small minority aren't holding up the financial stability of an entire state. I think the voters also, I want to thank them for their wisdom and support in Proposition 30, because what that did was give California, the 8th largest economy in the world, a $2 trillion economy that thrives on innovation and investment, gave us a little bit of a buffer as California starts to recover. So this time, for the first time in well over, I believe, a decade, and many of you in this room would know that probably even more intimately than I, gave us the opportunity to reinvest in education, which I think is one of the more critical and important issues in our state. The voters agree, and that's why they supported Proposition 30. And for us to put money into higher education, K through 12, preschool, we feel pretty good about that. Did we get everything we wanted in this budget? No, because the state cannot handle extended expenditures and new programs. But we did get some very solid things, particularly on education and a number of other areas. And I do think that we have to continue. I agree with Governor Brown. We have to continue to be concerned about our fiscal stability and to watch that, because we don't want to find ourselves back in the position of deficits and cuts, which is why the rainy day fund is so important. It's why putting money into the reserves, certainly paying down debt. So we've got a balance of fiscal responsibility, ensuring stability, and also expanding opportunity. And I think that that's what I feel good about coming out of this week, and that it went so smoothly because we have been working on that framework. At least the Assembly Democrats have been working on that framework since November. So I feel good today.
Good.
I hope you do too. I hope you do too.
You talked about the trade-offs that you have to make and saying no even to your own caucus. And I'm wondering, I want to talk about another set of trade-offs. The Tesla battery factory has been in the news a lot, and obviously there's a certain governor who's very aggressively trying to win the factory from California. That's Governor Rick Perry, who's also been in the news for lots of things lately.
And I want you to know I feel very healthy today. I am not addicted to anything, other than coffee, which I was shooting as I came into the room. I thank Governor Perry for being concerned about me, though.
Okay, thoughtful of him. But we want jobs, we want manufacturing, at the same time we want environmental protections. How do you find the balance, as you are now in this role, between the things that Californians need and want and the values such as environmental protection and some of the so-called business unfriendliness of California?
That is a great question, and it is one that we struggle with every day in our caucus. We have a Democratic caucus of 55 members, and we love the fact that we have a supermajority. Let me tell you what that translates into. Beliefs from A to Z, from San Francisco and Northern California all the way to Southern California, which, by the way, doesn't end in Los Angeles. San Diego, Imperial, San Bernardino, Riverside. We have views that reflect that diversity of our citizens. And so it is a balancing act, and it is tough because we know that Californians support making sure that we have our environment protected, that we protect our coastline, that we take that seriously as Californians, that we protect our natural resources. On the other hand, we also care about good jobs, and that lends to discussions about CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, lends to discussions about how you do make it more business friendly. Just this week, thanks to leadership of the governor and the Senate and the Assembly, we are putting out $30 million in tax credits, which was a piece of legislation we got approved last year and the governor signed, to give tax credits to businesses who are investing in jobs in California, for hiring veterans and people who've been unemployed for longer than 6 months. $30 million going out into the community to help spur jobs. And we look forward to that producing another 6,100 jobs with an investment of over $26 million because of our investment. So I think that we're always going to struggle with that balance, and we're going to argue amongst ourselves. But that is the nature of the democratic process, and clearly we have things to do in that regard. We still have discussions to have to try to make California more business friendly and at the same time protect our environment. And so you're going to see that continue to play out in the legislature in terms of pieces of legislation, in terms of where we put our budget dollars, and the fact that we do want to encourage California grown businesses. And let me be clear, we're not in competition with Texas. California is not in competition with Texas. We are in competition with France and Germany and Brazil. We are the 8th largest economy in the world. So, but we're welcome to have Governor Perry come back and spend his tax dollars in California, because he has to stay at some hotel and he has to eat somewhere. So.
That you are sitting here as Speaker of the Assembly was anything but predictable. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your life story and how you got to California and how you got to this position. As you know, we have a number of young women in the room today, young women leaders, who are here to learn from you. And you grew up in rural Virginia in very humble circumstances. And I was wondering if you could just paint a picture of your family and your growing up.
Well, I'm always I feel a little odd about that, mainly because I did have a hard upbringing. But, I bet that my story is similar to at least some of you in this room, or there are some similarities. My parents were working class, blue collar people. My dad was a World War II veteran. He came home to Virginia, ended up in construction and coal mining and lead mining. My mom gave up her dream to become a nurse because, in the 50s, things happen. She ended up foregoing that to marry my father and give birth to my brother. And so she put her dreams aside to become a nurse and ended up working in factories. So it was a bit of a hard life. I grew up in the hollers. That's an ER, not hollow. You don't ever go to Virginia and West Virginia and say hollow. They will know that you are not from there. But, I grew up in substandard housing. We didn't have running water until I was about 8 or 9 years old. But the thing that impacts me more when I think about me living in a house with no running water, carrying in water, and outhouse, is that my mother was 38 years old before she moved to the city and had indoor plumbing. And, so for me, my life, my mom was 38 years old. And we talk about mentorship. My mom was an incredible mentor, and she's no longer with us. She would probably never know that she was a mentor to me in a way that she was not a mentor to me like Chris Kehoe was my political mentor. She was a mentor in the ways of teaching me how to have hope, how to persevere, how to keep moving forward despite the difficulties. And I consider her as much a mentor as some of my other mentors in life, like Chris Kehoe. But I think, we all learn from our experiences, and I had hope. And I had the opportunity of a good education. Despite growing up in poverty, I had the ability to go to college with scholarships and low-interest loans, the Pell Grant. It took me 10 years to pay my college loan back, the loans that I got to go to a private school in Southwest Virginia, $61.52 a month for 10 years. I will never forget that. Well, certain things you remember. But, it was a difficult life, but I think what I would say is there were people around me, there were programs, there were before and after school programs, there were, the neighbors took an interest. You learn to grow up quickly, and, I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't change my life experience. I'm not sure what I would hope for, how do you hope for something different if you use what you've been given? and really the support that I've had around me throughout my life enabled me to be here. And so I think the message I would impart to young women in this room is you have a set of skills and abilities that are uniquely your own, and added to your life experience creates who you are. And you know, one of my favorite songs is a Jackson Browne song, "The Dancer." Do you know it? The Dancer. Throw a few seeds of your own along the way, and you be the leader that you can be in your world, and you make the most of your opportunities. And I didn't plan this path. I didn't plan to go into politics. It just sort of happened because I was engaged in my community and opportunities came. So wherever you are today, keep in mind that there's always possibilities for your path to go in a different direction, and who knows where you will end up, and who knows who will help you get there along the way.
How did your upbringing affect your perspective and your priorities as a lawmaker?
Well, I think when you see that I'm interested in affordable housing, that probably comes from, you know, I will say I always had a roof over my head. So I feel very fortunate. There are many people who don't. So housing and homelessness, very important part of what I believe in terms of policies that I support. Getting money for affordable housing, I did that on the city council. Healthcare, I grew up without healthcare. My family didn't have access to insurance or healthcare. We went to free clinics. So healthcare is critically important, and you will see I worked in community clinics before I got involved in politics, and healthcare is very important. Obviously education, because I wouldn't be here. As I look at our superintendent, I wouldn't be here without the opportunity to have been able to have decent schools, K through 12, before and after school programming that kept me out of trouble, and college. So education, healthcare, housing, absolutely. That help. We bring to the job the perspective that we have from our life experiences, and I think that shows in the policy issues that I care the most about.
You earned your BS in political science and then went on to the John F. Kennedy School at Harvard, a remarkable ascent from the blue-collar family you came from. And I'm curious what you thought you were going to do with the education. You knew you were going to change your life in some incredible way, but what did you aspire to growing up?
Oh my gosh, I just wanted to get out of poverty. Let's see. Political science, because I was interested. I really, the focus in college was on community organizing. And it was a political science degree with a focus on community organizing. And I met my second mentor, I would say, Steve Fisher, who was at the swearing in. I was thrilled that he was here to see me 30 years later actually make something of that political science degree, because once I left college, I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with a political science degree. Because I realized that I would have many more years of loans if I went to law school, and you know, added to that $61.52 a month. I was trying to figure out that. And I actually realized I wanted more to do with people. So I really started to think about social work, but my community activism kicked in, and I managed to get a job working at first a Job Corps center in San Diego when I moved here. It was a bad time. The mid-'80s was another depression. Let me tell you, it was depressed in Virginia, even more so, you know, than just typical life in Virginia. It was depressed there as well, and I couldn't find a job. So I came to California to support my sister, who was in the Navy and was getting ready to give birth to my fabulous nephew, Thomas. And so I came to support her. And I got here, and I managed to get involved with some social programs, community involvement, ended up working at a community clinic, a women's reproductive health clinic, 3 of them, 1 in Los Angeles and 2 in San Diego. And it just fit nicely with my world of activism and making sure there's access for women and health care. And it really was that involvement in community through the LGBT community, the women's community. I chaired the Coalition for Reproductive Rights, Take Back the Night, all of those really nice radical women's things I did. I loved, and it was a great foundation for me to meet people. And when Chris Kehoe ran for city council, I was very excited to get involved in that because she was the first open lesbian elected to the city council in San Diego. And everyone thinks of San Diego as a conservative military town. It's actually a very progressive city in a county that is somewhat more conservative. So I helped Chris get elected, and I really still didn't know what my life career was. I loved working at the clinics. I loved healthcare policy. But Chris offered me the opportunity to broaden my horizons and go to wonderful things like community planning groups. Any of you ever done that? But I'm a little nutty, and I loved it. I loved learning. I'd done some land use stuff in college, and I loved planning committees and town councils and business association meetings. And from 7 a.m. until 10 at night, I would be going to all of those meetings, and I just loved it. I thought, here is an opportunity now for me not to just focus on healthcare, which I thought I would always be in. And frankly, I thought I would just take a break from healthcare because, I worked at clinics and we were picketed, and at some point after 6 years of that, you really get tired, a little bit tired. And I thought, well, I'll take a break and go do something different, and I'll come back to healthcare. That was sort of my thought because I really love healthcare policy. But I went to work with Chris at City Hall and realized I could work on small business, economic development, affordable housing. It was just all those things, civil rights, passing ordinances to support non-discrimination at the city level, getting money for affordable housing. And I was just, this is the greatest job ever. I loved working for Chris. I loved being a staff member and going to all the community meetings. And I would say now, as I did all that work, people just sort of naturally said, you're going to run to replace Chris when she leaves the city council. And I won't share my first answer with you because it sort of simulates what John Burton typically says.
Fill in the blank. Huh?
Yeah, and Chris finally said to me, Tony, you've got to quit saying that. You've got to quit responding that way. People are actually serious. And so I used all of those relationships from the LGBT community, the women's healthcare community, the work I had done with Chris in planning committees and business associations. And so when I made the decision finally to run for city council, I had all those relationships. I'd worked in all those communities, and it was a wonderful experience. I ran, and I still wasn't sure politics was my life, but I thought, this is a cool job. I like it. I'll have even more influence on shaping policy as the elected official versus as the staff member. And one thing just sort of led to another, and here I am, and I am sort of still amazed to be here as the 69th Speaker of the California State Assembly. But I just want you to know, you never know what opportunity may come your way. And I think the best thing I can say is when an opportunity arose, I actually took it. And with a little protest here and there, but ultimately realized this is what opportunity comes my way. And if I have an opportunity, and I would say this to every single woman in the room in particular, when you have an opportunity, you need to take it. Because this is where the lean in part becomes very important, because there will be someone more than willing to bump you right aside if you hesitate for a minute. So don't hesitate. Move forward and take that opportunity, because it isn't just about you. It isn't just about me. It isn't just about me. There was an article in the Roanoke Times where I grew up in Virginia, that Roanoke Times in Virginia. And the picture I was above the fold, that was kind of cool. Above the fold in the Virginia newspaper, and the second page showed a picture of my spouse and I kissing each other as, I finished being sworn in. And to me, for people to hear the work I've done in the women's health community, the work that I've done in the LGBT community. So for young women and individuals, not just women, but in Virginia, to see that I could be there and here today is a story I think that's important for everyone, because it isn't about me. It's about their hope and their possibility. And so I'm mindful of that for women, for members of the LGBT community, for young people or people who come out of very impoverished backgrounds. I think it's important. And so with that, I sort of have to buck up and put on the mantle of speakership and be the speaker. And I got to tell you, some days that's not easy. You know, because we all have self-doubt, right? We all think, oh, can I pull this off? You know, can I really pull this off? Well, yes, we can. You can.
It's interesting what you said about the newspaper in Roanoke, because when you and Jennifer, after your swearing in, walked across the assembly floor hand in hand, it was in every newspaper in the state, and it went uncommented on, really. And so I'm wondering, you came of age in a time and at a place that was presumably less comprehending and less accepting, less tolerant. How do we knock down the remaining barriers to equality?
Well, I think for those of us, I think it was Harvey Milk who said the most profound thing you can do to move equality forward is come out and to be who you are. Now, let me be clear, I'm obviously able to do that in California in a way that I didn't feel as I was coming out at age 18, 19, able to do in Virginia. But I think it's important that for that picture to be in the paper in Virginia is important because it gives permission. The Speaker of the California State Assembly can be a lesbian and it's okay. You know, that's the movement. But it takes a lot of those actions. It takes a lot of that small town in Kentucky, that little town that voted to support marriage equality in the middle of Kentucky. That's courageous. Me kissing Jennifer on the assembly floor, not as courageous, you know? But it takes all of us doing those things to bring about change and to make a difference. And I think it's important for that reason alone, because we're not there. You know, we don't have full equality. And I mean, even in California, you know, there are places and times and ways that I probably wouldn't feel very comfortable taking Jennifer's hand, you know, and so we still have work to do.
How do we get young girls, especially a girl somewhere today in the Central Valley or somewhere in Riverside County, someone whose family is having a hard time and may not see a clear path to power, and however you want to define power, not just merely as an elected official, but how do we get these young girls to imagine a life and a career like you've had?
Well, you make sure that education is fully funded so that they have the ability to partake of everything that this great state has to offer. The programs that are important, the preschool program, that translates into policy. You know, that's a great question, and we can spend time talking about, oh, let's take a conference there. Let's go to, I don't know, I'm not going to say it. Let's go somewhere in Central Valley with a group of women and make a point. But I really think it's about the basics. It's making sure that everyone has a level playing field and equal access and the ability for job training, the ability for health care that helps breakfast in the morning. You know, I went to the Breakfast Club, and as I told someone, I still remember those great little donuts with the powder on them that they gave us after we had the good stuff. You know, I remember those things that helped me be able to pay attention in school because I'd had a decent breakfast. You know, those are the things that will give these kids opportunities, that will give families opportunities, so that when they see me or from my impoverished background on the newspaper cover, that there's a connection to, I need support in healthcare, I need support in education, job training, jobs, that there's a nexus and it makes sense, because that's how you get there. That's how you get there. And then when you add to it the visibility of the first Latino man selected to be the Speaker pro tem in California, or the young woman from an impoverished background, a lesbian, those are the visible things that you see and can talk about, but it's the foundation and the substance of those policy discussions we have that make it really possible for them to be here, for me to be here.
I want to ask you very quickly about a recent court decision that was quite stunning, and that was the ruling by the Superior Court judge to strike down teacher tenure in California, arguing that it infringed on the constitutional rights of poor children. What do you think of that decision?
Well, you know, there's multiple branches of government, judicial, legislative. Obviously, this is in the courts. I think it's a dialogue. I think it's a dialogue that has been started and put back on kind of the front page because of a court ruling, but it is clearly a discussion we're going to have with parents, with teachers, with trade associations and unions, it's a discussion we have to have. And clearly it's one that has touched an emotional place for people, and probably people have very different opinions about whether that was good, bad, what are the pros and cons. That's the discussion we have to have. And this was an opening salvo of yet another hard and painful discussion that we have to have as Californians, probably as legislators, and certainly it's in the courts. So for now, that's where it is, but the discussion is going to be out there.
We end She Shares with a rapid-fire round of 10 questions. Because we're short on time today, I'm going to make it 5.
Oh, good.
So you're lucky.
Thank you.
So just short answer, whatever top comes to your mind. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, that was supposed to be quick, huh? Well, I always wanted to be a teacher.
Okay. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, yeah. I would like to zap and freeze the room. I've thought about this clearly, except for the one person that I'm irritated and want to focus on, Sorry. I don't know what that says about me.
Name 3 words that best describe you.
Compassionate, thoughtful, caring.
Good. I don't think there's a person in the room who would disagree with that.
I got that from my mother. At least you think I'm bragging.
So we'd like to open it up. We have a few minutes for questions. And let's see, Terry's got the microphone. And she's right there. So if you have a question, if you would please raise your hand and identify yourself.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, Terry Thomas, Thomas Advocacy. Could you talk about the role that women in the legislature, particularly in the Assembly, may or may not have played in your, for lack of a better word, campaign for Speaker?
It was significant. I think that I heard one person utter, well, she can't, well, it came back to me. She can't do it, there aren't enough women to support her. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, obviously that didn't work out for them, but I would say that there was a very, very strong group of women that helped me get here today. And I do believe that the women in the legislature had a serious role in selecting the speaker, and will in the future. So pay attention. We do have power when we choose to use it, and I'm very appreciative of all the support I got, all of it, each and every individual. You never forget. You never forget the folks that were with you when you needed their vote, and I will not forget. But in particular, let me just. Well, there were a solid group of about 5 women that were incredibly helpful to me.
Well, while somebody's thinking of another question, you said you'll never forget, and I'm reminded of Willie Brown, who liked to be referred to as the Ayatollah of the Assembly, and I'm curious how you would like to be known.
Ayatollah, I don't think so. I think I'm going to have to let other people figure that out along the way, and I'll see what I think about what they say. But I've got a job ahead of me, and I want to be the best speaker ever, and that means hard work, and that comes later, not now. People will determine, my legacy.
Any other questions? Yes. Now, here's the microphone.
One of the biggest challenges, Karen Fish with Visit California, is time management. Mm. How do you manage your time? There must be so many requests, so many draws on your time. How do you manage your time every day?
Well, I'll retire still trying to figure out that time management thing. Remember those books they used to give us, and they had the projects section and I have to say, and this is really important to the women in the room who want to be part of politics in some way, shape, or form. I have great staff. I believe I was great staff because I loved my job, and I loved working with Chris Kehoe and being her staff member and helping her be organized. The biggest factor I have is an incredible team of staff members who want me and us as a team to be successful. And so, you know, what I would say to you is I want to meet with everybody. You know, I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Yeah, I want to talk to them. And it's just impossible. So I really, it's the structure around me that helps me. And I have to make time for my spouse and my dogs. Those are the key things, because I'm afraid if I don't make time for the spouse and the dogs, when I'm done with this gig, you know, my dogs won't talk to me, you know. So it's really, the biggest thing I focus on is trying to make sure I'm not shortchanging my family in this process.
So on that note, we're going to wrap up. I'd like to thank Speaker Tony Atkins for being our guest today at She Shares.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.